Sheikh Taha, Bismillah, we can start now.
I'm not able to share my screen.
Let me make you host. Yes, you are able to now.
Okay, Jazakallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone. Jazakallah khair for joining us for this program. Our subject on today's discussion will be the fiqh of moonsighting. We will, inshallah ta'ala, look into many of the aspects about moonsighting that we often hear about and often hear disputes about, and we'll try to shed some light onto how we can leave today while having some sort of understanding as to what is the reality behind many of these aspects. The lunar calendar in Islam plays a very large role in our Sharia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, Inna iddata shuhuri 'inda Allah 12 shahran fi kitabillah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has declared that the number of months are 12. So before we get into looking at how a new month starts and what determines that, let's shed a bit of light briefly on the background of the Islamic calendar that we have today. So the Hijri calendar is a lunar calendar whose months begin and end depending on the stages of the moon, as we all know. The moon's disappearance, or we should say the appearance of the new moon, signals the end of a previous month and the beginning of a new month. Now, the Arabs, amongst which our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent, they also used to follow a lunar calendar, very similar to the one that we have today. And they had 12 months as well. The only difference is in a couple of points. One, the names were different of the months. The names of the months were different. And secondly, they did not have a fixed system of numbering years. Instead, they would label the years based on some major event which took place in that year. A very common example is that the year in which our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born is known as Amul Fil, the year of the elephant, because that is the year in which Abraha and his army from Yemen tried to attack the Kaaba using an army of elephants. So this is how they would date their years, label their years by signifying some major event that took place in that year. Now, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was sent amongst the Arabs, this system continued for the most part. He got his nubuwah in Makkah Mukarramah, spent about 12, 13 years there, and then went to Medina Munawwara and spent 10 more years there. Now, what many Sahaba started to use to identify years is they would refer to the Hijrah. They would say this many years after Hijrah, this many years before Hijrah, and that's how they would generally use dates, because Hijrah was a major event for them at that time, the largest event of the time. But still, there was no system of the calendar as we have it today. Later on, during the time of Umar ibn Khattab, the Sahaba got together and they said that we need to have a more formal system of an Islamic calendar. So the Sahaba were gathered, opinions were taken. Some said we should start the calendar from the birth of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Some said we should start it from when he was given Nubuwah. Some said we should start it from Hijrah. Some said we should start it from when he arrived in Medina. Some said we should start it from the time when he passed away. Many different opinions were given. At the end, Umar anhu, he decided that we will start the calendar from the year of the Hijrah. The year of the Hijrah. Now, this is important to understand because a common misconception is that the calendar that we have begins from the time of Hijrah, meaning Hijrah started on the 1st of Muharram. That is not the case. Like we said, that the system of years and months already existed beforehand. So it wasn't a new schedule of months, but it was a new way of counting the years and a new set of names to be given to the months. So what they decided was that the year in which the Hijrah took place, that would be the first year of Hijrah. That would be the first year of Hijrah. So what the Arab were counting as their years, the Sahaba looked at where did the last year end? What's the closest point to Hijrah that we can start our system of our first year of the Islamic calendar at? When they did that, they found that Muharram, basically the first month of their year was a few months before Hijrah, okay, about 3-4 months before. So they said, okay, that is the closest point. So we will start our first month of Muharram from there. So from there, Muharram started, and then the Hijrah actually took place around Jamad al-Ula, Jamad al-Ukhra, so a few months down the road. But that was the year in which the Hijrah took place. That is why that was labeled as the first year of the Islamic calendar. And from then onwards, up to now, we have passed about 1442 years. That's a little bit of insight about the calendar. As for the calendar itself, we know that there are many important dates as Muslims that matter to us and that are based off of the calendar. Okay, we have Muharram, which starts the new year for the calendar. This helps us determine what the 10th of Muharram date is for the sake of fasting. Ramadan, of course, perhaps the most important one, the start and the end of Ramadan. Shawwal for Eid al-Fitr, Dhul Hijjah for the days of Hajj, and Ayyam al-Bid. This is just an example. The Ayyam al-Bid are the 13th, 14th, and 15th of every lunar month, which are the stages in which the moon is the brightest. So Ayyam al-Bid means the white days, the days of whiteness. So they've been named after that light, and these are the days where it is sunnah to fast for these 3 days. And as we read in a hadith, that a person who fasts on these 3 days, they will get the reward for fasting the entire month. So determining what is the 13th, 14th, and 15th of the month, again, it is based off of being able to determine when a new month starts, and accordingly setting the dates and moving forward from there. There is a principal hadith which we often hear about when the discussion of moonsighting comes about. This is a hadith of Bukhari and Muslim. He said, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi fa in ghumma alaykum fa akmilu iddata sha'ban 30 yawman." He says that fast when you see the moon and cease fasting when you see it, meaning end the month of Ramadan when you see it. If it is unclear to you or it is cloudy, then complete the 30 days of Sha'ban. There are many ahadith, dozens of ahadith in the same meaning. The wordings may vary slightly, but the meaning is the exact same. That fast when you see the moon, لِرُؤْيَتِهِ, and end your fast, end your Ramadan when you see the new moon of Shawwal. And if you can't see it, then complete 30 days. This hadith will come back again and again throughout our discussions, insha'Allah ta'ala. Now, looking back at the start of the Islamic calendar, we see that during the time of the Sahaba, there were not many issues which arose when it came to sighting the moon. This is for many reasons. For one, the Muslims were still small in number. They were more or less in a very close geographical range. Yes, after the time of the time of Umar anhu, Islam spread a lot more, but still relatively to what we have today, they were still close by. And all they had to do was they went out on the night, the 29th night, and they searched for the moon. And if they saw it, then the news spread amongst them very quickly. And they knew that, okay, tomorrow we will fast, or tomorrow we will have our Eid, or so on. Tomorrow the new month starts. And it was kept as that, at that. Very rarely were there cases where the Sahaba started their Ramadan or their Eid or their month on different dates. It did happen, and we'll talk about that at the end of our session, inshallah ta'ala. It did happen, but generally it did not. Okay, there were no issues as let's talk about whether we should use optical aids or not. They didn't exist. There was no discussion of, okay, are we going to do local moon sighting or are we going to do global, right? The means were not there to communicate with other parts of the world that were further away. So everyone just looked for their own moon, and accordingly they started their month. They celebrated the Ramadan, their Eid, they scheduled their fasts, and all the other events of the calendar of the Muslim year would take place accordingly. So things were a lot simpler at that time. Nowadays, what has happened is there are many more aspects that have come into play. There are many more aspects that have come into play. There exist many different forms of optical aids today. This raises the question as, can you use optical aids or not? And we'll talk about that up ahead, inshallah. And within that, you have different questions that, what type of aids or can you use? To what extent can you go? What can you use? What can you not use? What can you use it for? What can you not use it for? Many questions arise because of the existence of this optical aids now. You have astronomy. You have the knowledge of astronomy that has spread a lot more than before. And that raises the question, okay, now can we depend on the research of astronomers and what they say as to when the new month is starting? Right, so that opens a whole another door of possible differences of opinion as to whether you could use it, whether you can't use it, to what extent can you use it, should it be shut out completely, could it be used to certain extents? Again, many new doors open up. You have the ease of communication today, right? So again, that opens up the door to whether the sighting should be local or global, right? If someone sees the moon in one part of the world, someone else on the other side of the world can know within seconds. So now, should they also have to follow that same sighting or not, right? All these questions come into play. You have social media, where you have these keyboard warriors who are not scholars, but at every occasion of Ramadan or Eid, they go off on rants and they create an uprising, they create a commotion in people based on their own understanding. And like there's unlimited access to unfiltered information that anyone can go and do some searches online and think that they know something now, and accordingly they could start to draw their own conclusions. Okay? And like I said, this often happens to be people who are not scholars. They gain some knowledge, and where in the background the scholars are doing their work to determine whether the new month should be announced or not, these people often go off and make their own conclusions and create great uprisings and fitnas in the community, unrest in the community. And it's very sad that this happens, because for the most part it's caused by a lack of knowledge. And if people who are doing these things knew what the reality of the situations are, they would not be doing them, and it would help create a lot more unity in the communities. In any case, as you see with all of these aspects, there are many more avenues that the mas'ala, the rulings of moonsighting can be looked at from. And based on that, there are many different opinions that exist. So our focus today, inshallah, we'll be looking at three main points which are discussed in moonsighting. The first is whether we need to actually sight the moon to begin a new month, or can we use calculations. Secondly, are we allowed to use optical aids to sight the moon, or do we have to sight the moon with the naked eye, meaning just seeing it directly in the sky? We can use binoculars, telescopes, or even more advanced tools. And lastly, local versus global sightings. Do you have to sight the moon where you are living in your own local community? What are the limits of that? Is it your community? Is it your city? Is it your province, your country, your time zone? What is that? What does local really mean? And that in respect to global moon sighting, that if the moon is sighted anywhere else in the world, can we take that sighting? What do we do with that? How do we move forward from that? So a new month beginning in Sharia is determined by one or two things. Again, the principal hadith that we saw, sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. Fast when you see the moon, and cease fasting when you see it again. So looking at the hadith, we are given two options. Either you sight the moon, either you go out and sight the moon, meaning from your eyes, not going into naked eye or optical aids yet, but your eyes have to see it. That's what you call a sighting. So the hadith says, complete a sighting. If you cannot complete a sighting, then you will complete 30 days of Sha'ban. Okay, and though the hadith is meant for the beginning of Ramadan, this applies to every month. This applies to every month, that you search for the moon on the 29th night, and if you don't see it, then you will complete 30 days for that month. So what does this hadith tells us? What does this hadith tell us? It tells us that the only two methods that Sharia has prescribed for us and has instructed us to pursue are either sighting the moon with our eyes or completing 30 days of the month. There is no mention here of using research of astronomers. Okay, so these are the two fundamental methods to sight the moon. And in fact, this has been declared as a consensus of an overwhelming majority of scholars. Many of the great imams of their times, Abu Bakr al-Jassas al-Razi al-Hanafi, Al-Babaji al-Maliki, Ibn Rushd al-Maliki, As-Subki al-Shafi'i, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Ibn Abdin al-Hanafi, and many more rahimahullah ta'ala. They have all expressed their consensus on this, that astronomy or calculations, let's just call it calculations, calculations cannot be used to start a new month in Sharia. Okay, because we have not been given that instruction. We've been told, look for the moon on the 29th night or complete 30 days. So we see there's a hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam which further supports this opinion. He says that inna ummatan ummiya la naktub wa la nahsib ash-shahru hakadha wa hakadha. He says we are an unlettered nation. We do not write and we do not make calculations. The month is this much or this much, meaning 29 or 30 days. Now let's look at this hadith a little bit. We are an unlettered nation. What does that mean? Does it mean we are illiterate? We don't know anything? We don't have any knowledge? No, absolutely not. Okay, we know that there have been many great researchers, mathematicians, astrologers, even many Muslim professionals in every field in the world, and Muslims have made incredible contributions to society at large. So that doesn't mean that Muslims have to be unlettered, or that they can't gain knowledge. Furthermore, the hadith says we do not write, but the Quran was written on scriptures during the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was put together in the form of a book after, but it was still written at that time. And there are many instances where the khutbahs of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam were written down. Okay, many of the Sahaba, they used to write down things that they used to hear him say. So why did they say that we do not write? Of course we write. Right? It would be absurd to say that Islam says we are not allowed to write anything. And it says we do not make calculations. What does that mean, we do not make calculations? Does it mean we're not allowed to study math? We can't know what 2 + 2 is? We can't have our students attend math class in school anymore? No, of course not. What this hadith is telling us, which is an authentic hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari, that we are an unlettered nation, meaning as a Muslim ummah, we do not look at aspects of our Sharia through calculations and deductions of worldly matters, of worldly methods. We are taught to submit ourselves to our Sharia from every aspect without trying to justify it based off of science or any other type of research. That is the implication of this hadith. And to further solidify the connection of this hadith with our discussion, he said this hadith when they were discussing the days of the month, which is why right after saying this, he said the month is this much or this much. It's 29 or 30 days. So the hadith, it shows us very clearly that the intent of our Sharia, or the desire of our Sharia, is for every Muslim to submit to every aspect of Sharia as it has come down through wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and we don't try to justify it through worldly means. Okay? Otherwise, there are tons of aspects in our Sharia, in our daily practices of as Muslims, which you can never justify through through science or through calculations. Someone asks you, why is Fajr Salah 2 rak'at and Dhuhr is 4? Justify that through science. You can't. Right? Someone might say, okay, the amount of exercise you need in this way at this time, you could say something about it maybe, but it's nothing definitive, nothing absolutely certain. that you can use science or knowledge of this world to justify through it. Okay, that is the beauty of our Islam. We accept it as it is. We don't try to look for proof or reasons to show us that what we're doing is actually correct. Okay, we accept, we submit as Muslims. That is what Muslim means. You submit, you accept things as they are. Now, sorry. Okay, before we get into some of the arguments that are presented by those who favor using calculations to determine the start of months, there is one little discussion that we have in a way two types of months. Okay, the first is a legal, a shari'i month, which we know as Ramadan. Okay, and I'm choosing Ramadan here because that is what our main focus is today. The second is an astronomical, scientific one, which is the 9th month of the lunar calendar. All Islamic rulings are based upon the first month, meaning the shari'i, the legal month, which may or may not coincide with the astronomical month. Okay, so what that means is calculations may say that, okay, this month the moon was born at this time and so on and so forth. So this is when this new month started. Whereas in Sharia, by sightings, that we may come to a different conclusion. So for all the rulings of Sharia, we look at the moon, the month that was determined by sightings. The other one could still exist for the sake of having a calendar, which is used to plan the year. You know, so many Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, they work with basically two calendars. They have one calendar, the al-Qura calendar, which they have deduced based off of calculations, and they use that for the sake of their logistical affairs. Okay, because that is the primary calendar that they use. So they need to have something set dates in the future for the sake of being able to run their country. But when it comes to matters of Sharia, their months are determined by sightings. They don't use that month that they have already calculated. Okay, they have sightings that take place, especially in the months of Ramadan, Shawwal, and Dhul Hijjah. And from there, they determine the start and end of Ramadan and the Eids and the days of Hajj. Okay, so basically, you could think of it as two different spheres which have no relation with each other than the fact that they have the same names of the months. Therefore, once the sighting of a moon is confirmed and accepted by the Muslim communities, then there's no need, no space to investigate further and see, does what we have now match with the calculations, or does it not? No, there's no room for that. There's no need for that. Okay, we are focused on our Islamic month, which our Islam has told us how to determine whether it begins or not by either sighting the moon or completing 30 days of the month. Okay, so please keep that in mind, that many Muslim countries do have a set calendar that they have calculated for years and years to come. But that is just for the sake of running their day-to-day affairs. Just like imagine in living in Canada, if we didn't have a fixed calendar for the next year or the years to come, it would be impossible to plan things to run the country. So that's why they have done that, for the sake of planning out their affairs. But like I said, when it comes to Shari'i matters, Islamic matters, they do turn back to sightings and start the months in that way. Now, there are some arguments that are put forward by those who support calculations. For one, they say that calculations are qat'i, whereas sightings are dhanni. Qat'i, it's without getting into detail of it, it's a term in Sharia that means something is definitive. Okay, and dhanni, something which is not definitive. It's very difficult to translate the word dhanni in one word in English. English doesn't have that strength of a word to translate it. Speculative is sometimes used, sometimes undefinitive is used. It just means that it's not qat'i. That's basically what it means. Okay, so just to give you an example, whatever comes in the Quran is qat'i, and most ahadiths are dhanni. Okay, so it's a different level of definity in them. So they say that calculations are qat'i, and sighting the moon with your eyes is dhanni because you could make a mistake. How do we respond to this? So first of all, we see that no, calculations are not qat'i. There's no way they're qat'i, because many times astronomers defer themselves as to whether the response to a certain matter is. So you cannot say that it is definitive. Okay. Secondly, Sharia did not ask us to consider scientific and astronomical calculations. It did not ask us to consider these as determining factors in the first place. So whether it is qat'i or dhanni or whatever it is, it doesn't even matter. We don't even have to look that way. Our job is to follow the sunnah. Okay, and the imams of the main madhahib, they have given their rulings accordingly. Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik rahimahullah, they say that it is fard al kifaya, to go out and sight the moon on the 29th night. Meaning, they say that you at least someone in the Muslim community must go out to sight the moon. Otherwise, the entire community would be sinful for not doing that. Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, they say that it is a greatly emphasized sunnah to do that. In any case, they all agree that this should be done, and this is the way to begin a new month. Now, let's look at a couple of narrations here in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam of when moons were sighted and how he dealt. What did he do in those cases? These are both ahadith from Sunan Abi Dawud. The first one says that Abu Umair, he narrates that some men came riding to the Prophet ﷺ and testified that they had sighted the new moon the previous day. He ﷺ therefore commanded that the people to break the fast and to go out to the place of prayer in the morning, meaning to start their Eid Salat. Another hadith, a Bedouin came to the Prophet and said that I have sighted the moon, meaning of Ramadan. And the Prophet, he asked him, do you testify that there is no God but Allah? He replied, yes. I asked again, do you testify that Muhammad is the apostle of Allah? He replied, yes. And he testified that he has sighted the moon. He said, Bilal announced to the people that they must fast tomorrow. So if you notice, in both of these cases, someone came, a Bedouin or someone else, they came and said that we saw the moon. What did he ask the Bedouin to confirm? He asked the Bedouin questions to confirm that the Bedouin is a Muslim. That's it. He didn't say, okay, let's get together. Let's see, was it possible to see the moon today? Was it not possible? What did you see? Are you sure what you saw? No, he didn't get into any of that. He said, you saw the moon, but that's enough for us. Go and announce we're going to start our Ramadan. And the first hadith, we're going to tell the people who fasted that don't fast. Today is actually the day of Eid. We're going to go and pray our Eid Salat. So the acceptance of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam of these testimonies is a clear guidance for us to follow without any reluctance. And of course, when we receive news of sightings from somewhere, we do need to confirm that the news is accurate, it is correct. Right? That's what you do. But besides that, we cannot speculate that maybe these people, they made a mistake, maybe they're lying. That is not our job to do. If someone says, a Muslim says they have sighted the moon, then that is what will be taken. Yes, there are some guidelines that fuqaha have mentioned that if it is a very clear day at that night, there are no clouds, then there should be multiple people who see the moon. Okay, because there's no, if one person saw it, there's no reason why many others couldn't see it as well. If it is a cloudy day, then yes, if one person says they saw the moon, then that will suffice, because it's understandable that it's difficult for everyone to see it because of the cloudy conditions. Another argument that is put forward that in support of calculations, that we use calculations to determine our salat timings. So why can't we use calculations for our moon sighting and the starting of our months? So a few things to consider here. Okay. Salat calculations are not based off of calculations entirely. Okay. The way that it is done, the way that it was done here, and the way it is done in many places around the world, that efforts are made to go out and see what are the actual times to start one's salat. Okay. Sharia has given us the guidelines based on the positions of the sun and so on, as to what the salat timings are. So what happens is people go out to areas where the sun can be seen clearly. They do this for day after day for weeks and weeks, and they collect data. They collect data as to what time Fajr started this day, what time Isha started this day, what time Maghrib started, and so on. And when they have amassed enough data to draw conclusions off of, then these are compared against what we call the degrees of salat timings. Now, we're not going to go into what that exactly means. That's not our topic today. But different degrees of methods of calculating the salat timings give you different conclusions. So that data that was done through naked eye observations, those are compared to the data with the calculations of the degrees, and it is matched to see what does this match. Once it is matched with a certain degrees, then from there the salat timings for the rest of the year are taken. So even in the case of salat timings, it's based off of sightings first, then calculations. So to say that because we do calculation in salat timings, we could do those for moon sighting as well, that is not correct. Again, many great fuqaha, including Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and others, have clearly objected against this argument, that it is not sound, it has no basis, and cannot be used to help to prove the point. The hadith that we are seeing again and again, in the end it says, if the moon is unclear to you, then complete 30 days of Sha'ban. Let's think about this a bit. The Prophet's instruction to complete 30 days of Sha'ban when the moon is not sighted, it lends even more support to differentiating sighting the moon against using calculations. In fact, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he says that this instruction to complete 30 days, it's an indication that we should not refer to calculations or astronomy. He says that the Prophet ﷺ guided us to completing 30 days of Sha'ban, while he could have guided us to consider other means that enable us to know the beginning of the astronomical month. So what he's saying is that Prophet ﷺ, he didn't give more options. That, okay, if you can't see the moon, then try to do this, and try to do that, then try to do that. He told them, if you can't see the moon, then complete 30 days of Sha'ban. Nothing more. We were not asked to do anything more than that. So, in conclusion to that, it is clear through the many aspects that the moon must be sighted. by our eyes. Okay, we must sight the moon, whether we sight it with the naked eye or through optical aids. We'll talk about that here, but it has to be sighted. If it is not sighted at that time, if it is not seen, then 30 days of that month will be completed. Okay, we absolutely cannot, like we said, by the consensus of the majority of fuqaha over the centuries, you cannot use calculations to establish the start and end of Islamic months. We cannot base our ibadat, our worships, off of calculations. Okay, inna ummatun ummiyya, we're an unlettered nation in that regard. We accept our Islam, our ibadat as they are. We don't try to make calculations or justifications through science or other fields of science. Okay, now that being established, the next point we want to focus on. Okay, so no, we know that we have to see the moon, but do we have to see it with the naked eye, or can we use optical aids? So, like I mentioned, this is a matter where there are different opinions. Okay, even between the different madhahib, there are different opinions, and it's not exactly possible to say that someone is absolutely correct in one opinion or someone is absolutely incorrect. Okay, those who argue that it must be a naked eye observation, they base their arguments again off that same hadith, sumu li ru'yatihi, fast when you see the moon. They say that you need to see the moon yourself, not some machine seeing the moon. So they say that any tools used like binoculars, telescopes, or anything else are not permissible. Okay, and where the supporters of optical aids say that no, it's just to help us because we can't see it with our eyes, the supporters of naked eye observation say that, well, that's what the hadith says, that if it is unclear to you, then just complete 30 days. Don't go and use optical aids or different methods now. The second stance is, of course, of those who agree with using optical aids. They say that, well, our eye needs to see the moon. Our eye needs to see it. If we are looking through optical aids, then it is still us. We are still seeing the moon ourselves. We're just using some tool, some method to help us further stretch our vision. And they give the example that if someone has bad eyesight and because of that they can't see the moon, would you say that if they put on glasses and see the moon, that is not acceptable because there's a tool helping them now to see the moon? No, no one would say that. So they say that similarly, using binoculars or a telescope is completely permissible. Okay, but like I said, at the end of the day, this is a matter where there's a difference of opinion. There will remain a difference of opinion on this. It's not going anywhere. But I think it's safe to say that many of the major authorities in the world who are looked towards when it comes to moon sighting, they use optical aids. Okay, Saudi Arabia, we're going to talk about at the end about following Saudi in moon sighting, but they also use optical aids. Okay, they have some of the best technology out there when it comes to using to searching for the moon through optical aids, and that is why they often see the moon when others do not. So in any case, like I said again, this difference of opinion is there, it will remain, but what's important for us is to understand that it exists. To understand that it exists, and to be willing to accept that there are supporters of an opinion other than ours, and not try to put them down or to bash them or to prove them wrong when they make their decisions about a new moon starting based on the opinion that they hold as to whether naked eye observations are required or you could use optical aids. The last major point that we want to talk about is local versus global moon sighting. This again is something very common that comes up. Do we have to see the moon locally, or can we use the sighting from somewhere else in the world? This is very similar to the last point of optical aids versus naked eye. There are both opinions. There are supporters of both opinions that exist here. And there is no definitive way to say that one is right or one is wrong. Our job is to accept that there are holders of both opinions. Now, in understanding this a bit more, what does local moon sighting mean? It is, in fact, difficult to determine what is the extent of local moon sighting. Many supporters of local moon sighting, they quote the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where, as we saw some of them, where they followed the moon sighting that they saw in the local communities. But like we said, for the most part, that is because there were no ways of knowing what is happening anywhere else in the world. Okay. So local moon sighting, it could mean your community, your neighborhood. Okay. It could mean your city. It could mean your province, in our case. It could mean your time zone. Now, this is one that many people accept. Okay, for those who support local moon sighting only, they say that you need to look within your time zone, and they give some leeway of some other time zones. Some say that you need to be within the same hemisphere of Earth, and it could be accepted. But as you add more and more flexibility in it, it gets closer and closer to global moon sighting. Okay. So again, like you said, in local moon sighting, different people will have different interpretations as to what local is. For the most part, people go with the time zones. Okay. And in global moon sighting, it is about seeing the moon anywhere in the world. Sometimes some restrictions are put, like 12 hours ahead will accept the moon, or a different amount, but generally, meaning in terms of time zones, 12 hours ahead. Generally, global means global. If the moon is seen anywhere in the world, then the supporters of global moon sighting will accept that sighting and start the Ramadan. Except in the case where a country is in the time zones that are further ahead, that doesn't apply to us. We're really behind. But countries like, or basically any country that it could already be their next day, their next afternoon, when another country who's behind them sees the moon the night before. Now, of course, they can't accept that sighting. They've already started the next day. They're already through halfway of their day. They can't change the matter now. Yes, if they find out in the morning, then possibly something could change. But generally, moon sighting means anywhere else in the world. Following Saudi Arabia, this is something extremely common in the matter of moon sighting. Many Muslim countries around the world, they don't even get into the different aspects, the different ikhtilafat. This is followed very greatly in the UK as well, and most Muslim countries in the Middle East, where they say we're going to follow Saudi Arabia. Whatever they do, that is what we will do. And they do this based off saying that is our qibla, that is where we pray towards. So when they do the Ramadan, the Eid, that is when we will do it. So looking at this closer, we see that this is basically an opinion that supports global moon sighting. Okay, because Saudi will announce their Eid Salat either if this the Eid Salat, the new month, either if they see the moon themselves or someone else in the country surrounding them sees the moon. So that those supporters who say that we are going to follow Saudi is basically saying that we're going to follow global, but we're going to wait for Saudi to declare it officially, then we will declare it as well. And like we said, that is absolutely fine. It is one of the valid opinions. If someone wants to do that, they could do that, but as the community as a whole. Okay, and we'll talk about a little bit more just up ahead. A couple of common questions that come up, um, that if someone is not following Saudi Arabia, then what if we end up having our Eid on a day that they are fasting? And this applies actually to anywhere else in the world as well. That if someone is celebrating their Eid, how are we fasting? Or how are we fasting when they're having their Eid? And isn't it haram to fast on Eid? And then another question, that how can we celebrate Eid al-Adha even though it may not be the day of Arafah in Mecca? Okay, because the day of Arafah, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Hajj, that is when Eid is. So, sorry, this is a mistake. It should be the day of Nahr. Anyways, the 10th of Dhul Hijjah in Mecca, when the main events of Hajj take place. So, looking at these, there is a hadith. I have it here. No, I don't have the hadith here. So basically, the hadith is a hadith of Tirmidhi, where the Prophet he says that the fast is the day that you fast, and your fitr, your breaking of your fast, is the day you break your fast, and your sacrifice of Eid al-Adha is the day that you sacrifice. What does that mean? The fast is the day that you fast. Your sacrifice is the day you sacrifice. Your fitr is the day that you celebrate fitr, that you break your fast. It means you as a community, you as your local masjid, okay, your city, your country, meaning you where you are. If the ulama, the religious authorities that you normally follow throughout the year have determined, based on their research and analysis, that Ramadan is starting or Eid is starting, or so on, then you need to follow that. You need to follow that. That will be your Ramadan. That will be your Eid. Meaning the hadith is telling us that it is possible to have different days of Ramadan and of Eid in different parts of the world. And we're going to see that in the hadith on the next page. So you do not need to be concerned about what is happening anywhere else in the world. You need to do what your ulama, your scholars, your authorities are telling you to do, and your fast will be valid, your Eid will be valid, your sacrifice will be valid, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, we need to focus on our own, the decision that our ulama, our authorities announce for us. Okay, because we cannot isolate ourselves and say that, oh, okay, my whole community is starting Ramadan today. I don't agree with them. I'm going to follow some other opinion. Or my community, they're praying, they're having their Eid today, even though it's not an Eid in Mecca. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do my own thing. You can't do your own thing. How are you going to pray your own Eid Salat? Right? Yes, if there's a community who's following that, you're part of that community, then by all means you do that. Right? But to go against your own community and to try to isolate yourselves and do your own thing, that is not something that our Sharia asks us or permits us to do. There's one hadith here that we'll go through, and then we'll go to our concluding comments, inshallah. Father Rahimahullah, he narrates that he went to visit Muawiyah in Syria. He says, while I was in Syria, Ramadan started. I saw the moon of Ramadan on Friday. Then I came back to Medina at the end of the month. Abdullah ibn Abbas, he asked me about the new moon of Ramadan and said, when did you see it? He said, we saw it on Friday night. Further, he asked him, did you see it yourself? No, sorry, Ibn Abbas asked him, did you see it yourself? Further, he replied, yes, and the people saw it, and they observed fast, and Muawiyah also observed fast. Then Ibn Abbas, he said that we saw it on Saturday. We saw it we didn't see it on Friday. We saw it on Saturday. So we shall continue to observe the fast until we complete 30 fasts, or we see the new moon of Shawwal, 29 or 30. I said, meaning Fadl said, is the sighting of the moon by Muawiyah not valid for you? He said, no, this is how the Messenger of Allah has commanded us to do. Meaning, we decided on something. We didn't see the moon. We didn't know that you saw the moon, right? But in any case, we decided to follow our own sighting, and we were taught that once you have done that, you started your month, then you complete your month. You complete your month, and that was it, right? They had this dialogue. No one started a big issue. Oh, your Ramadan is not valid. Your Laylatul Qadr is not valid. Your Eid is not valid. You're this. You're that. Nothing like that happened. Right? They said, okay, that's your opinion. This is the opinion that I'm going to do, and that's it. They kept it at that. Okay. So this brings us to our concluding point of unity. There are, like we said, there are many aspects in moonsighting that could lead to different opinions. Our job is to do one of two things. If you are the leaders of your communities, then your job is to unite the community on something and follow that method. If you are the followers of the leaders of your community, then your job is to follow, and just that. Here in BC, as in many parts of the world, for years and years and years, there have been great conflicts that take place because of moonsighting issues. Some of you may remember, I think this was 10 years back, maybe 2011 or 12, where on the night before Ramadan, a large fight broke out in one of the masjids here about this, and people start to go to the length of saying that this is a question of iman and kufr. Okay? It is nowhere near that. It's not in the masjid of halal and haram. Okay, there are differences of opinion which exist because of the points that we discussed, and our job is to accept things as they are, look to our Muslim leaders, look to our religious authorities, see what they announce as the day of Eid. Don't try to make your own conclusions. Unless you are qualified for it, you're an alim who has spent years and years and years in this field, you're an alim, you're a mufti, then yes, you could hold your opinion. Even then, you won't see ulama isolating themselves and saying that, oh, I don't agree with this opinion that this masjid announced, I'm going to do my own thing. No, they know. They have the knowledge, enough knowledge to know that they need to put aside their own opinion in this case, and they need to go with the community. Okay, so after seeing how many different aspects there are about moonsighting that there could be different opinions on, one might ask, okay, how do you even move forward then? The way for that is for every community, every city or province to get their ulama together and have everyone discuss, agree on certain guidelines that will be used for establishing the start of new months. Everyone should agree on that, and you move forward from there. at the end of the day, that is the most that could be asked. It will never happen that the entire world celebrates Ramadan or Eid on the exact same day. Logistically, it's not possible. Um, and though it is possible to happen within a country or within a province, it does happen sometimes. It does happen over the past years that the entire country started Ramadan or had Eid on the same day. But you will still always have some small masjid, some musalla somewhere, someone who wants to do their own thing, which is it's not ideal. It's not ideal, but like we said, unity does not have to mean doing the exact same thing. A very large and integral part of unity is acceptance. You need to accept that there are people out there with other opinions that are based on sound principles of Sharia. They're not just making things up out of nowhere. Okay? If we as members of a community can start to live our lives in this way, it will make the coming of Ramadan and Eid and Hajj a lot easier and simpler. Okay? If we have our own opinions, if you want to voice them somewhere, go meet your local imam and talk to them. Don't go on social media, start a huge uproar, because you don't even know if your opinion is valid or not. What is it based off of? A few Google searches? That is not enough, not nearly enough to be in a position to now go and try to create disunity, different groups, different opinions in the communities. So that being said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the ability to practice upon all of these points, to do whatever we can in our ability to help maintain unity. Look, there are so many other aspects in the Muslim Ummah today that are causing distortions and differences and different groups and different sects. Many of them are important matters of halal, haram, sometimes even iman and kufr. Something like the moonsighting, it is nowhere near that level, but it's been raised to levels even beyond those matters. Okay, so may Allah give us the ability to understand these matters and to implement them. Ramadan is only a couple of weeks away, right? And people in their minds, they know, okay, well, let's see what happens this year. Let's see what arguments or what conflicts break out. But they don't need to. They don't need to. Alhamdulillah, in BC, we are blessed that the BCMA and the majority of the non-BCMA masajid all agree on similar guidelines to follow. Because it wasn't the case before. It took a lot of work to get done. But alhamdulillah, we have that now. And the situation here is much better than it was in the past. May Allah make it easier for all the communities in Canada and around the world to have similar setups in place, and may Allah make it easier for all of us to move forward and practice upon our deen as it pleases Him. Jazakallah khair everyone for attending. If there are any questions, I can take those now. No questions? Okay, alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair everyone for attending. May Allah accept you giving this time out of your weekend, and may He make this a means for a lot of khair to come into our communities. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.